Dao De Jing, Chapter 9. This passage is about the moment a thing is full, and what happens when you don't stop there. The original text, in classical Chinese with pinyin pronunciation. Chuāi yíng zhai bu ru kai yi, Chuāi rui zhai, bu qi chan bao. Jin yu man tong, mo zhai néng shu, fugi'er jiāo zai kai jiru, Gōng sui shēn tui, tiān jai dao. And in English, keep filling a vessel past full and you would have done better to stop. Hammer a blade to its sharpest, and it will not hold that edge. Gold and jade pack the hull, no one can guard them forever. Wealth and rank matched with arrogance, you bring the ruin on yourself. When the work is done and you step back, that is the way of heaven. Let's take this line by line. Keep filling a vessel past full, and you would have done better to stop. The image is simple, a cup overflowing, but the point is not about cups. It's about the human refusal to recognize when something is complete. We keep adding more credentials, more possessions, more influence, as if fullness could be indefinitely extended without becoming overflow, without becoming waste. Laozi says, the act of stopping at the right moment is itself the intelligent act, not passivity, knowing when enough is enough. Hammer a blade to its sharpest, and it will not hold that edge. A very fine edge is also a fragile one. There's a threshold past which refinement becomes brittleness. A surgeon's scalpel is sharpened to precision, but you wouldn't use it to cut rope. When you push anything toward an extreme, you sacrifice range, durability, adaptability. The most refined thing is often the most vulnerable. This applies to systems, to careers, to arguments. The more tightly optimized something becomes for one condition, the worse it handles anything else. Gold and jade pack the hull. No one can guard them forever. Accumulated wealth requires increasing effort just to maintain. Every large pile needs defense, locks, lawyers, vigilance, anxiety. The hoard becomes its own burden. This isn't a moral judgment on wealth. It's a structural observation. What you accumulate, you must protect. What you must protect, you become servant to. The hull full of treasure is also a hull you can never fully leave. Wealth and rank matched with arrogance, you bring the ruin on yourself. This is the sharpest line. Laozi doesn't say that ruin comes from outside, from enemies, rivals, fate. He says, the person who combines power with arrogance manufactures their own downfall. The arrogance is not incidental. It is the mechanism. It causes bad decisions. It alienates allies. It closes off the feedback that might have corrected course. You authored it. When the work is done and you step back, that is the way of heaven. This is the pivot, and it's easy to misread as defeatist. It isn't. Laozi is not saying abandon your work before it's finished, or refuse achievement. He's pointing to something precise. There is a moment when the work is genuinely complete, and the right response to that moment is to release it, not to linger, not to keep shaping what no longer needs shaping. The person who can recognize that moment and act on it is aligned with something real about how things work. A craftsman who knows when a piece is done and sets down the tool. A parent whose adult child no longer needs guidance and who lets them go without clinging to the role. An executive who built the organization and can hand it off without needing to remain the center of it. The exit, done rightly, is itself a kind of mastery. What might this mean for someone reading it today? There is a pressure, not always stated, often just assumed, that more is always the direction. More growth, more reach, more output, more recognition. This chapter doesn't argue against achievement. It argues against a specific failure mode, the failure to recognize when you've arrived, and the compulsion to keep going past the point where going further costs more than it gains. The interesting question chapter 9 leaves you with isn't how do I get there? It's, would I recognize when I was there? That's genuinely difficult. Fullness doesn't announce itself. The edge doesn't signal its own brittleness until it breaks. The chapter is asking for a kind of attention, to states, to thresholds, to the difference between building towards something and clinging past it. Not every passage has a lesson you can apply by Thursday. This one might be one to sit with longer. What remains at the center of this chapter, past all the images, the wisdom is not in filling, but in knowing when to stop. Chapter 10 continues.